Welcome to a new video on my channel, and this is going to be a test and a review video because in the last couple of mailbags I've been purchasing these small LED flashlights, and also there is this bigger flashlight as well. And so I mean, I knew that whatever they advertise on the listing on Aliexpress is definitely far from the truth. And I thought, I mean, even though they are not performing what they claimed, I think they are still quite usable devices. But I really wanted to compare them just to see how long it lasts on a full charge and what's the relative brightness between these, these LED lights. So I put a small testing apparatus together, and I also started doing something in Node-Red. And basically I created a flow. I created a very basic sensor using an ESP8266 and I think it's a BH or BT1750 ambient light sensor. And then the whole thing runs ESPHome just to keep it simple, and then just sends the light meter data to Node-Red. And what I've been doing in Node-Red is I reused one of my earlier flows that I created to track energy consumption measurement, and I just done basically the same thing. So there is this graph which logs the light levels, and I can save those charts and then I can just review them later. So I can just give them names like, which one I tested, whether it was a full brightness or half brightness, and at least I can just easily compare them, see how, long they ran and what was the relative brightness between the two. And I think it was a simple apparatus. As I said, I had mostly the hardware around. I was able to reuse a PCB that I created earlier for a home sensor project. As I said, most of the Node-Red flow was available. I just had to tweak it a little bit. And I mean, yeah, the lights are here, so I was just testing them. It took me a couple of weeks to go through all the different cycles, like, full brightness, low brightness. I still haven't even tested the red light and the blinking function, but I was just mainly using the, the constant light function anyway. So here I'm going to run through the results, see what what was on the listing, how the LEDs performed. So we are going to look at the graphs, and at the end I'm going to talk about the the test setup as well and the Node-Red flow if you are interested. And of course, if you want to replicate the same thing, I'm going to put all of the documents in the video description, so you will be able to find my YAML file for the ESPHome sketch and also the Node-Red flow. So it should be simple to replicate. And what I want to say, in this test, I didn't want to do a scientific measurement, as in like, I don't know if this BT or BH1750 light sensor is a good enough sensor, if it's calibrated. I just happened to find a black box which I placed everything in just to filter out some of the ambient light, and of course for these smaller cob lights. So for this one, the box was good enough because I was able to place it like, sort of far away from the sensor. But then for this big light, it was just like really close anyway. But as I said, I don't want to judge on I don't want to measure the actual brightness. It was more like a comparison, how these models compare. Okay, so I'm going to look at the first one. So this was the first one I purchased, and I'm calling this around. And just to repeat the spec, I mean, by the way, the spec for all these three I think it was pretty much the same. I think they all use around the 500 milliamp hour or thereabouts lithium battery. They all have USB-C charging or the USB-C port. I've tested all three of them, and actually all four of them, and none of them can use PD. So you need to use a USB-A to USB-C cable. Otherwise, if you use a USB-C like a PD charger, it's just not going to charge. So they probably gone cheap and not use the PD charge chip, just a regular 5-volt input, I guess, from the USB. So the first round one was yeah, I think it had cool features. I mean, it has this belt clip, the bottle opener, and it has this clip thing on the back, so you can just pinch it onto something. And also it has another clip here. Yeah, you can see that. So you can clip it on a hat like here and then sort of face downwards. I think it's good. I used it a couple of times actually. It's actually useful. And the magnet is really weak, so I don't recommend using the magnet. So let's see how this one performed. Well, first of all, before I do that, let me just change the view and let's look at the listing first. So I haven't paid that much for it. It was in the $199 or the $299 deal, and it has it says that it uses a 650 milliamp hour battery, and it says it lasts for 4 hours. Well, it definitely doesn't last for 4 hours, and 1.5 hours on full brightness. And yeah, it has these 4 modes. The really annoying thing that you always have to cycle through these modes. That's probably the only thing that I really hate about this light. Yeah, that's it. So, oops. Let's look at the performance. So this was my first one, the round full brightness. And by the way, you're going to notice that for every single one of them, they do this trick that when the light turns on, it's really bright, and then within a couple of minutes, it reduces the brightness dramatically. And I don't know if it does it on purpose or there is a built-in like a temperature regulator inside, because it does get warm. I don't think that for this price they would have a temperature regulator. I think they are just programmed to only provide this really bright initial light for a couple of minutes, and then it goes back to like a steady light, as you can see here. You can see the numbers here. So it started like 1200 lux, but then so that was 849. And then 852, so basically like 2 minutes later, it was down to 400 lux. So the bright mode is pretty much just 400 lux, and it was able to provide that 400 lux for a long period of time with a little bit of, well, okay. So for 400, it has gone down to how much was it in the beginning? 389, it was going down to, let's say, 340. So that's like a 10% dip. Is it 10%? Yeah, roughly about 10% dip. And it started at, a couple of minutes before 9 o'clock, and then it started dipping around 11:30. So that was about 2.5 hours. So 2 minutes on a really bright mode, and then an additional 2.5 hours. And then from that 2.5 hours, it was pretty much in half an hour, it was going down to negligible 22 lux, which is like, it's less than a candle light. So that was like, just shimmering light. And at that point, I usually just turn it off, because I don't even think that they have, probably they have some very basic battery management, but I have never seen these. Well, I haven't gone to the point where it was completely off. Well, at least not in this model. And I was just afraid that it would just run the battery completely dry. So on full brightness, which is around 400 lux, it was running for, from 9 to 11:30, so 2.5 hours. Okay. So, well, actually it said on the listing 1.5 hours highlighted. So I guess in that respect, it sort of outperformed. I'm not really sure if you would call, 400 lux is, full brightness. But anyway, we can debate on that. And then round half brightness. So as you can see here, the half brightness is pretty much the same mode without the initial burst in the beginning. So it started at pretty much like 400 lux, and then before it started like really dipping, it was down to like 340. So as I said, it's pretty much like the first mode. And I started the test 2:30, and then finished at 3 o'clock. So it's pretty much the same runtime. So that initial 2 minutes of really bright mode didn't really make any huge difference in the overall performance of this light. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's okay. If you really need to use this light to, go out, find a key, go out to the garden, just need to go across just to quickly get to something, get down to the basement, find something and come back. You can do it in a couple of minutes, and in those couple of minutes it's going to be really bright, and I guess it does its purpose. But really, on most of the time it's going to be the advertised sort of like half brightness. That's what it is. Okay, let's go to the next one. I just need to find my cursor. So the next one is going to be this square one. So that was my second purchase, and it is a lot more interesting because it has different modes. You can see it has different LEDs, so it can produce cold light, warm light, full brightness, half brightness, reds, flashing red, constant red, and I was only testing the cold light on this one. And if you look at the listing, it was, again, I didn't pay this price for it. It was like $1.99 or I think it was $2.99. And you can see that it has these, clip, belt clip and bottle opener and, a couple of wrench sockets. And if I go back to the main view, you can see that it has a couple of these bits that you can put in here. Plastic holder, which is going to probably shear off if you want to use it for anything decent. But it has this hole here, which is a tripod mount. And by the way, it has some LEDs here, so it shows the state of charge. So that's it. And let's look at the listing if there is anything technical here. Yeah, light up to 100 and 200 meters. I think that's definitely true. And it tank specs, battery life 5 to 50 hours. Oof, let's see about that. 500 lumen, and again 500 milliamp hour battery. Now let's look at the results. As you can see, the mode of operation is pretty much the same as the previous one, because it starts at really high brightness and it's much higher than the previous one. So it's like 3000 lux, 3200 lux, and then, well, within 1 minute it pretty much goes down to 600. So maybe it was a slightly more than 1 minute because I didn't start the recording same time as I pressed the on button. But anyway, it's about a minute or two when it's at full brightness, and it settles down around 640. And as you can see, it's then from that 600 it goes down to, let's say, here, which is sort of like 500. So it dips another 100 lux in a really long period of time, and then again it slowly fades into, basically nothing. It's pretty much like the last slide. So testing started at 7:30, and then I would say, yeah. So that wasn't even an hour. Yeah. So 7:26 to 8, 11, 12 when it starts to dip. So that was like, yeah, about 50 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. But again, it's the same sort of battery as the previous one, but the brightness is much higher. So if you remember, the other one's like 300. So it's almost twice the brightness for about half the time, which again, it adds up. It's simple math. So I wouldn't expect anything more. But again, it starts higher. So that's good. And again, in sort of like in a half an hour, 45 minutes, it goes down to like sort of like this 50 whatever lux. And this one, I think this one actually turns off because it just stopped at 37 or thereabouts lux. And yes, I noticed this one this one actually is turned off, which I guess it's a good one. So it doesn't drain the battery all the way down if you leave it unattended. And this was the half brightness. So exactly the same as the other light. Well, the only difference here is that the half brightness is actually lower than the full brightness on the on the constant mode. So it again settles around like 400 and something lux, and then it dips down to 340 at this point. So it started at, let's look at this point, so 730, and there was 820. So that lasted only about an hour, which is it's almost the same period as the full brightness mode, but it was running at lower intensity, and still I would expect it that this would last longer. So I guess on this particular light, it doesn't really matter if you're running it on full brightness or low brightness. It's pretty much just only going to last for about an hour. And I would expect the warm light to be about the same performance. I'm seeing actually less number of LEDs, but the brightness feels about the same. So let me just show you up close again, if I can find my cursor. So, okay. Yeah, you see the small dots? No. Well, okay, somewhat visible. So there is definitely more of the cold whites, which are the outer ring. But again, I think the probably the warm white is driven a little bit harder, because for me it feels about the same brightness. Okay, so this was the square one, and this is the latest. This is my newest model. I can definitely tell that this feels dimmer than the other two. Based on the the outside, it has this square cob. Again, the case is, well, this outer case is metal, and it has a belt clip, a bottle opener, and it has a stand and a magnet. This magnet is a little bit stronger. This also has the tripod mount, and by the way, there is a button and the USB port on all three of them. So one side is the button, the other side is the USB. I can never remember which one is which, so I keep pressing the USB charger. Nothing happens, then I realize I have to flip over because the button is on the other side. I think on this one, no. On all of them it's the same color, so it's even black or red, so you can't really tell. You actually have to look, or just keep pressing both sides. So that's it. Yeah, it's definitely less bright than the other two. So let's see the numbers so we can see how it performs. So this was the newest. So at full brightness it starts around 900, which is already less than the first one, which was I think 1200, and then in a minute or two it settles down to 170, 180. So, and it keeps this 180 lux for about, so this was 10 o'clock and then 11 o'clock, about an hour, and it slowly drips away for another. To be honest, I think anything here is like really low. I mean, it's like almost like twilight here. So I don't think this part of the graph is any useful as a light. So it's a somewhat disappointing performance. Oh, we forgot to look at the listing. Let's see if they said 500 milliamp hour battery. So it's either not 500 milliamp hour, or for some reason it's just not performing as well as the others. I'm not really sure. 500 lumens. What was the first one? Did it say anything about lumens? I think the second one did say, yeah, 500 lumens. So this is definitely not 500 lumens. It never performs same as the middle one. So yeah, from 10 o'clock to, let's say, sort of 11, from 180 to 150 lux, and then it just fades away. So not really useful, to be honest. It's it's okay if you need some light, but it's not really a bright flashlight. And if you go to the half mode, then it is actually half mode. So it starts around 300, but again, after 1 minute, it dips down to 72 lux, and it keeps it, it goes from 70 down to 50 before it really starts fading away. And it started like 5:30, and okay, so for this one, at least the half brightness, which is you know, it's fairly low, but then it lasts for about, so that was 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, let's say almost 5 hours, 4 hours, sorry. And let me switch views, sorry. So, you know, I mean, I have lights here, up here, to illuminate the whole scene, but you can see that it gets brighter than, you know, how much light I need for filming. And that's the, oh, okay, sorry. So this is the half brightness, but probably you have to wait about a minute to see that it really dips down to that. How much was it? 180 lux. So maybe I would just put this aside. Now I'm just going to put it here, and we are going to look at it in, let's say, 10 minutes, how it looks like. So that was the small ones, and now let's look at the big one. So this big one, and actually for here I tested 3 different modes, and I'm not really sure if I've shown you in the video, but if you press it once, then the absolutely huge, you know, full brightness of the first flashlight is on, and then it's half brightness, and then flashing, and it's off. And if you long press, then these lights come on, and this has different modes. So again, half brightness, and then it has red, and then it has police light, and then it's off. So I was testing the full brightness and the and the half brightness on the main beam, and also on this side beam as well. So let's look at it. So that was the flashlight full brightness. The story is pretty much the same. It's less of a dramatic effect, but it starts really high, like 1700 lux, 17,000 lux, sorry, and then it within 3 minutes it dips down to 10,000 lux, which is like, it's pretty much like 3 times the really bright setting of the middle one. But again, this is a proper flashlight. Probably, I think it has an 18650. Again, we didn't look at the listing. It was definitely cheaper. It wasn't like this. It was like $3 or $4 bucks when I bought it. And I think it has a 2600 milliamp hours 18650, and it says it has 18 lumens. Sorry, 800 lumens, which feels a little bit low compared to the 500 that was advertised on the other ones. So probably the 500 is just like, you know, 200 or something like that. So again, on the sort of this constant mode, it starts off at 10,000 lux. Don't really ask me what these dips are. I mean, these must be definitely dips because, yeah, as I said, it was in a box. And yeah, I'm not really sure, but the funny thing is that the bottom of these dips seem to be like sort of like a constant value. So I'm not sure if maybe it was an issue with the sensor, but maybe if we just ignore that, then it starts around 10,000 lux, and when it starts really going down, it was still up to 8,800 lux. And from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 4:20, so roughly 1.5 hours on this full brightness, and still, you know, really high brightness. And then it goes down in another, what is it? Oh, that's not so much, like 20 minutes, and it goes down to like really low brightness. But again, if you see here, the really low brightness is like the low brightness settings on the other LEDs. So it's like still like 800, 600, and then, you know, when I switched off the testing at 200 lux, that's when the small LEDs, so on the light itself, here we have a couple of LEDs, so these indicate the state of charge. So when I stopped testing, it was like blinking at the lowest level, so it was signaling that the battery is almost gone. So that was the full brightness and half brightness. Again, we see this jitter as well. I'm not really sure why is that. And this starts around 8,000 lux and then remains to, let's say, 7,000 lux. So pretty much just like it's the same level as how it dips down after a couple of minutes. And so I would assume that the time would be around the same. So it started not 70 minutes after 4 o'clock, and that's about 2 hours. Full brightness, and this was okay. That was about 2 hours as well, a little bit more. No, so that's 3 o'clock to 1.5 hours. Okay, so 1.5 hours and the half brightness. It was just 1 hour. That's a little bit strange. I don't know why it lasted shorter on the half brightness. Maybe the way I'm considering the cut here is slightly different. But again, it's roughly 1.5 hours on either settings, and it starts dipping down, and then it stopped around 300 lumens, 300 lux when I switched it off. And let's see those side lights. Okay, this must be the side light because it's definitely less. So that was the floodlight was are the LEDs on the handle. So it started really bright, but then in a couple of minutes it sort of kept constant around 300 lux all the way down to here, and then started around 8:30 and then finished at, let's say, 1 o'clock. So that's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 4.5 hours. That's not bad. And half floodlight, it started right and a slightly bit lower, so 282, and I'm guessing it would be, around the same time. So 1.5 hours on the main headlight and around 4 hours on the handle light, which I think it's good. I mean, if you 4 hours is pretty much like a night from, let's say, sunset to, by the time you finish drinking with the buddies and then you go to bed, in some cases. Maybe in some cases it will be longer. But yeah, I mean, it's a bigger battery. It's almost, by the spec, it's roughly like, 4 times the battery of the small ones. No, not 4 times. Oh yeah, 4 or 5 times. So 500 versus 2600 milliamp hours. And that's it. I think that concludes. These are all the scenarios that I had. And then again it dips down at, well, this one stopped at 7 lux, which is really, really dim. That's almost like you can just notice that the LEDs are lit. So this is how these guys compare, and let's look at, yeah, you can tell that now it is just barely brighter than my studio lights, which are the ring light, which is around the camera. So maybe if you need for camping, you need to put it in a tent so you have some lights before you go to bed. It will be still sufficient. So not enough if you want to go out and find something, but for a general low light, I think it is good enough. And definitely if you can get it on the price that I paid for, I don't think it's a bad purchase. So I think that would be the comparison of these models and reviewing all the specs and the data. And now I'm going to show you the testing apparatus that I did for this exercise. And I found this black box. I'm not really sure what I got in this one, but it was good enough to keep the ambient light out, and it's black inside and black outside, so that was good. And I created this PCB, which I just sellotaped it on the side. And as I said, probably about maybe 1.5, 2 years ago, I created this video about a home sensor where I created this PCB, which has a lot of, it has ESP8266, and it has a bunch of different sockets for various sensors like DHT, BME, 280, and various I2C sensor, it actually has a footprint which is good enough for this BH1750. So that is an ambient light sensor. And what I have done is I plug this thing into USB, and then it starts measuring, and I think it sends a measurement every minute. It's configured to send it every minute, and I would just put the light here, and I turn it on, and I close the lid so it doesn't get any ambient light from the room, and that's it. And I keep measuring it until I see that the graph drops to nearly zero. And as I said, the reason it was a little bit difficult for this lamp because it's just really big. So obviously the light source in this case was much, focus please. So it was much closer to the lamp than what it was before. Yeah, that's the focus. There's too much black probably. But again, yeah, at least it was a good enough comparison for the three small ones. So that's how I measured it. And by the way, I'm going to link all the videos that I referred to in the video description. So one of the video was about this PCB, so you can see it here if you want to. And that's the YAML. And this is the YAML file. And by the way, since I'm talking about past videos, I have a separate video of how I'm using ESPHome without Home Assistant. So it just I just use it to communicate with MQTT, but it is still easier for me just to put a small ESPHome project together than program this in Arduino IDE, which would be really easy as well, but this is still faster. So here the only thing I created, well, obviously I have a name of the sensor, I defined what the board is, I enabled a couple of logging, and the SSID and the password is coming from a secret file. So you will see that in the secret file you can define this, so you don't have to do it individually in every single YAML file. And it's going to connect to MQTT. And again, broker username, that's also in the secret file. So first what I had to do is the BH1750 is an I2C sensor. So I had to enable I2C. And for the ESP8266, these are the parameters that you want to put in for I2C. Oh, just to make sure that we do actually see some live data, I just quickly pulled up MQTT Explorer so you can see how it looks like. So there is a text sensor input, which is going to just say what is the uptime. So that's what it says. So it says 34 seconds. So I just literally turn this on, and then it also says 1 hour, 2 minutes and something. So that's like the human readable format. But then you have the uptime in seconds here as well. And I created a sensor, which is the BH1750, which has this name. And the I2C address is hex 23 for this sensor. That's the default sensor. And I'm just using a development board, like a small PCB for that. And as I said, I set the update interval to 60 seconds. You can, set a lower one as well. And I specifically defined that I want the updates to be sent in the device name /light. So it's light sensor /light. So at the moment it is looking at or observing 45 lux. And if I tip the box and it points more to the studio light or the ring light, probably we are going to see that this one going up. And I have one which reports the Wi-Fi signal, so this is the RSSI, and this is just the one that calculates the uptime, and then it generates this human readable format. So you can see it says now 1 minute 34 seconds. I think it does it in every 60 seconds, so it's always going to be 34 seconds now. And that's it. And I enable web server, which I always do. So if I just find a random IP, I can go to the web server and I can see what it is. Oh, you can see that the light level has gone up to 500 lux now. Very simple. And the magic really happens in Node-Red. So let's look at the flow in Node-Red now. So as I said previously, I had a flow, if I zoom out. So I have this flow, probably not zoom out that much, which measures energy consumption. And it does exactly the same thing. Actually, if I go back to power consumption, then yeah, I don't have an awful lot. Nothing really happening here. So this is now connected to my washing machine, and I think this only covers about 2 hours, and we haven't used the washing machine the last 2 hours, so this is nothing. The real difference in the light sensor measurement and this power consumption, then in the power consumption, at least as you can see, I was averaging like a 15-minute, I think I was averaging a 15-minute window. I was calculating a minimum and a maximum and an average within that 15 minutes. So this graph will always show like 3 lines when there is actual data. But then for the light sensor, I ditched the whole thing. But this is why I created a copy, because I was just, graphing every single value which comes in every minute. So, now you can see that. And so this now updates because I have turned on the sensor. And of course, if I don't have the sensor on, then no data comes in, so the graph is empty, and I can reset the chart at any point. Okay, so that was the difference between the two, but let's look at the this light measurement one. So as I said, it was really easy to just copy and paste the flow and make a few changes where I wanted to take out that averaging functionality. So the information comes in from the light sensor. I have a simple switch node where I only let data through which is greater than 0. So if the flashlight runs flat and there is no light coming in and the lid is closed, then it's just going to measure 0. So I don't have a big, line at the end of the graph, but the graph actually stops wherever, last meaningful data was measured. I set the topic here. That's just for the graph, because the topic becomes the value, as you can see here, the data series value, the series name. And then it goes into, it just goes into the graph. So this is a standard dashboard graph, and nothing really fancy. I said, please show me the last 24 hours or 500 points. So 500 points is going to be 500 minutes. So at max, it would only show you 500 minutes. But I didn't expect any of my lights to run that long. That's like 8 hours, I guess. So yeah, it was good enough. And it auto sizes anyway. So if I have less time, then it's not going to be a lot of empty space at the right-hand side of the graph. So yeah, nothing really happening here. The trick that I'm using is that whenever you have the graph node, and we usually just send in data to the graph, and we don't really care about the output node of the graph. But then on the output node, if you read the documentation, every time you update the graph, the output node always sends out the entire graph content. So it sends out the data which is in the graph in one single message. So it contains all the data that is being displayed. And I use this functionality a lot because you can just, for example, save this information into a file, and then when your computer starts, you can just load it into the graph. So your chart doesn't, or your graph doesn't restart whenever you restart Node-Red. And I'm using the exact same functionality here. Well, sort of the same functionality here, because what I do is, every time the graph is updated, then I get all the data in the graph. So for example, I can just use this very simple thing which counts as you can see, the payload is going to be an array, and in that there is going to be a data array, and that is going to contain all the individual data in the graph, and everything is 0 here because I only have a single series in this chart. But basically, by this one I can count how many records I have collected so far. So you can see here that the count is 3. So that's like, in my case, is 3 minutes because I'm getting readings every 3 minutes. So that's something which is getting displayed here, which is this one. And then it also goes into this save node, and this save node doesn't really do anything by default, but when I want to save the graph, I can, type here, and I can click on save chart. And the other thing this save node does, if you look at the context flow, if you look at the node context, then you can see that it actually stores the current chart. So every time the chart is updated, this one stores it in the context. And then when I request a new file name, or I type in a new file name, and I click on save chart, then this information comes to this function node as well. And then this function node is going to say, okay, now I requested the save, so whatever is in my context, which is the latest snapshot of the chart, is going to get saved in a file name. So here I generate the file name. So I want to save it in /home/nigma/charts/ and light underscore and whatever you have typed it in. So this is where I type like light, full brightness. Yeah, that's it. And I click on save, and then it saves. But I can do like tests, and then save, and then it says that is saved. And it specifies the file name, and then it puts this chart data, which is stored in the context, puts it into the payload, and it goes into a file output node. And then from the file output node, it goes into this node here, or this flow here, which basically just reads all the light underscore star dot dump files from the same folder where we saved the files. And then it creates a dropdown, so you can select it from this dropdown here. So now you can see that the test one is here. And then it reads the file, and then it presents that file. It basically loads that file into the second chart, which is this save chart. And as you can see, it just displays the same data what we have seen before. I mean, this one has one additional data, but you can see that it doesn't really retain the axes, but it just recalculates the axes based on the data. But then if I point on any value, then we can see the correct time and the date and the series name and everything. So it's good. And it's that simple. And I've also added the functionality that once you select a file, then you can click on delete, and that's going to delete the file. And then first it asks if you want to delete. If you click no, then bug. Then it still deletes. Okay. Ooh, rookie mistake. That's the problem about JavaScript. Oh, okay, maybe not the problem about JavaScript, but yeah. Nobody expects here to give a value to the payload, but then you still have to follow the context and the the one equal sign is data declaration. So I should have used 2 or 3 equal sign here, so it is a condition. So this is why it was deleting it. Anyway, it's not going to do that anymore. Shall we test? Let's create a new test. Test 2. Test 2. Delete. No. Not deleted. Okay, so that's the delete functionality, and it just calls a simple RM, which is remove in Linux. So if you want to do this flow, then you obviously have to have a dashboard installed for these things, and you also have to install, this is the file lister node, which is this one, Node-Red contrib fs. So this does the file listing, and you have a path here which you probably have to edit, because I don't think that you have the same file structure in your system, and then obviously you have to change it here as well, so it reads from the same directory. But the rest of it is just a piece of code which is generic, and it's not, you know, sort of dependent or specific to my system. I don't think there is anything here as well. Yeah, there's nothing here which needs customizing. And of course, you have seen here that all the files are getting prefixed with something, and then in here we are only looking for the same prefix as well. But if you want to use it for something else, or you just want to have a duplicate flow which creates a separate you know, files with, you know, separate data with separate prefixes, you can do that. And by the way, this flow is good enough to sort of measure, store any data. As you can see, all I'm doing here is I'm getting data from a MQTT topic which contains a number, and that's it. So this number can be anything. It can be temperature, humidity, whatever you want. So the only thing is that you want to change is maybe you want to change the topic here. So on the graph it shows, like, you know, temperature Celsius or temperature Fahrenheit instead of light level lux. But it's very simple. It works great, and I've used it in, well, I use it in a power consumption measurement. Now I'm using it line measurement. Maybe I'm going to use it for something else. It's good for sort of this ad hoc reporting, comparison of stuff, and I think it's great. I like it. So that would be the Node-Red part of it, and I think by this I managed to explain the whole process from the beginning to the end. We have seen how the hardware works, how the software works in Node-Red, how you can use it for your testing, and of course we have managed to compare these lights to a, you know, half scientific way. So I think that would be all for now. If you're interested in any of those details, there's going to be links for the files in the video description. There's going to be cards on this video for some of the other files and the other videos or other, you know, test stuff that I was mentioning in this video. But I think that will be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you next video.